right, hello everyone, welcome. I'm just going to pull this down while I'm talking up here and say, first of all, thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate coming on such short notice to this emergency strategy session. And folks are going to continue to filter in. I just want to quickly thank Precious Green, our Director of Programming, for helping out with check-in registration. To all the folks who are on the Zoom, welcome. Thank you for participating as well. Here's how it's going to go. We're going to try to keep this to 1 hour, and I just want to say that I kind of thought to do this less than a day ago, so bear with me. This wasn't something that's been planned for a very long time. Thank you. So here's what we were thinking. We're going to start by just trying to set some context. So we have two people in the room that I want to actually speak to you. One person is going to talk kind of about what has happened. And for those who don't know, give you some kind of numbers and some understanding about kind of what has happened in Afghanistan. And then a friend of mine who actually works for one of the largest refugee resettlement efforts in the country and is their director of advocacy is going to give you a sense of what are some of the efforts being taken right now. She's speaking in her capacity as a Truman scholar, just to be clear. Did I get that right? Yeah. Truman something. Truman's. Yeah. Okay. I'll take it. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break up into 3 groups, and you're going to self-choose which group you want to be in. And there's going to be 3 different strategy, basically ways in which people can help. You as a group will each have a person that's on my team that's there that's going to be taking notes and moderating. And you're going to choose the part of the issue that you feel most comfortable contributing to or listening in and being involved in. That's fundraising, advocacy, and marketing / social media. So those are the 3 ways that we're thinking we can impact from all the way out here. We'll set a little bit more context about that when we get to it. Then we're going to come back together. The person's going to share some of the ideas. And then we've actually been spending all day assembling resources for you. Places you can go, things you can email, things you can do. And Tomas has them on QR codes. And we're going to give them to you as you exit. You can scan them on your phone and actually take some direct action. The one thing is everyone is going to have to, we're going to go around the room before we leave, and people are going to raise their hand. I'm going to go this way, and they're going to make an out loud commitment. What is one thing that they will do in the next 24 hours? So we're not leaving this room until we each say what we're going to do, whether it's small or big, we're all going to do something. Okay, does that make sense? I'm going to fit it in an hour. All right, let's start with the first Afghan American elected official in this country, the United States, Aisha Wahab. I'm going to ask her to come up, introduce herself, and give us some context about what's happening. I should also mention that I am also Afghan. My father was born in Herat. I'm an Afghan Jew, so the Afghan Jewish history is particular and unique. The Afghan Jews have been living in Afghanistan for centuries. I'm very proud to be Afghan myself, and the last 36 hours have been very difficult for everyone, myself included. Are you married? Yes, and I'm married. All right, Aisha, I'm going to give you this.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I think in the last roughly 2 weeks, we've seen a lot of different things happen in Afghanistan. It's a country that we probably thought could not shock us any further. And yet the sad truth is that we are continued in our shock when we're watching Afghanistan. So I do just want to share a little bit of the background. Afghanistan has had over a 40-year war. There is not a single generation of Afghans living today that has not been affected by war. Their displacement, death, destruction, women's rights, you name it, has been affected by the war in Afghanistan. We could definitely argue that the war in Afghanistan actually started before the Soviet invasion, when the king was ousted by his own cousin. We can even go further back if we want to really get involved into it and talk about the 3 Afghan Anglo wars and the creation of Pakistan, the division within Afghanistan, and the southern border of Afghanistan that has divided the people. But we're not going to get into all that tonight. So I just want to state that the United States has been deeply involved in Afghanistan, whether directly or indirectly. The Cold War, many of us may know something about it. It was a war with the Soviet Union, with Afghanistan being the proxy, and the United States funding a lot of the war to, as many Americans have learned, cut Russia by 1,000 pricks and let them bleed out. That was the plan for Afghanistan. It is not the first time Afghanistan has been used in the world to fight wars that really are not Afghanistan's war, but the larger power in the world. It is called the Great Game Theory. The Great Game Theory started originally with the British, the Russians, and anybody else who wants to play in a sphere of influence in Asia. And what does that mean? With that being said, this was called the Great Game 2.0, with the United States all the way here, Russia, all the Asian countries, and the European nations. With that said, at the end of the day, the Afghan people are the ones that suffer. It is the women and children that are the largest casualties in the war. And it is the women and children, as well as not only the ethnic minorities, but the religious minorities. As many stated, we do have Afghan Jews, we have Afghan Sikhs, we have Afghan Hindus, we have Afghan Christians, but very small in number. And for the most part, many of them have lived in peace alongside Afghan Muslims. But that consistently changes. Now, Afghanistan is a landlocked country. And the reason why I mentioned the southern border is by international law, Afghanistan is to have that piece of land that is half of Pakistan that touches the sea. To be fully independent, Afghanistan cannot rely on their neighbors. And that is a dream of a lot of Afghans, but it's a dream that, you know, the borders are fixed at this point and what's really going to happen, but by international law, they have the right to that land. And the United States in 9/11, we were attacked by Al-Qaeda, the Twin Towers, and you guys, I'll be honest with you, I actually spoke about this to some fourth graders and they had no concept of 9/11, so I was a little like, I'm old. And yeah, it was interesting. I was like, okay, this is the wrong audience. So what ends up happening is that the president at the time, George Bush Jr., he stated that he will eradicate Al-Qaeda off of the face of the planet. And Al-Qaeda was being housed in that region of the world. We went with full military might, and the American people largely supported that. The international forces largely supported that effort. And what ended up happening is that the Taliban fell pretty quickly. There was fighting, but it wasn't to the point where the United States was seen as weak in that moment. And the sad truth of it was that the United States invested significant amount of resources into developing a government that was not for the people, by the people, or serving the people. The United States legitimized warlords, individual warlords of different regions, and made them members of parliament, minister, vice president. We had 2 vice presidents in Afghanistan. No other government, democratic government, has 2 vice presidents. In President Ghani's government, there was a president and a CEO. Nobody has that either, right? So Afghanistan was a very unique situation. With that said, Osama bin Laden was actually killed on May 2nd, 2011, 10 years after the invasion in Afghanistan. There's a lot of pundits that are saying on TV right now that the war in Afghanistan, the job was done within 2002. That's not true. Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan, and he was not in Afghanistan. So there's a lot of questions to be had. And at the end of the day, we saw people stating that women were going to be uplifted and the veil is going to be removed and so much more, and that was not the case. So today we are talking about women's rights, but I just want to go over some of the facts. The United States spent $2 trillion in Afghanistan. The lives lost of American service members is 2,442. US contractors, 3,846. Afghan National Military and Police, 66 to 69,000 individuals. Other allied troops, 1,144. Afghan civilians, 47,245. Taliban and opposition fighters, 51,191. Aid workers, 444. Journalists, 72. Humanitarian aid workers, 444. And this is from what we've counted since the invasion of Afghanistan in September. It is not necessarily all the Afghans' lives that were lost prior to that. With that said, we've had 4 presidents, 2 Democratic presidents, 2 Republican presidents. Now, all of their jobs were to oversee what is happening in Afghanistan. The withdrawal that many people are blaming President Biden, yes, the withdrawal, we can all say that the execution was very poor, but he has been president for 7 months, and he has served as vice president for 8 years. And he does have intelligence in Afghanistan. So this was a very poor situation that we see. The Taliban swooped up the nation in less than 2 weeks. And in fact, I know that KQED, when they interviewed me, they asked, how quickly do you think that Kabul will fall? And they said within 30 days, and I said within a week. If Kandahar is already taken, it's going to be less than a week. And that's exactly what happened. And I just specifically want to highlight what is happening today. The special immigrant visa. The thing that we're hearing on the news is how can we get the Afghan allies, the United States allies that served American soldiers, embassy workers, help translate for these people, our people. We promised them that if you serve us, we will allow you to come to the United States with your spouse and your children. And I want to just give a concept of what this spouse and child looks like. The translators are mostly all men. Their spouses, young women, and their children are not 1 child or 2 children. Sometimes it's 4 to 6 children. I serve on the board of the Afghan Coalition. We have been working with the special immigrant / new arrivals for a number of years. We know that in the Bay Area, it is difficult for Americans to seek housing, good paying jobs, a good education. It is even more difficult for the new arrivals. New arrivals are placed throughout the nation, but many of them migrate to the Bay Area, to LA, to DC, to New York City, because there are huge Afghan populations there. The diaspora lives there. However, the Afghan diaspora and the new arrivals are not culturally equivalent to each other. They have differences from socioeconomic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. The older Afghan generation is not as religious. They're very much, believe in equality and women's rights and so forth. And there's a little gap between the new arrivals and the Afghans that have been here for a number of decades. We have a lot of difficulty when we're talking about bringing a lot of the special immigrant visas and making sure that the visas go through so these individuals can come here. The sad reality is what is going to happen with their housing? What is going to happen with how can they earn funds? It is not as simple as just bringing them here and everything's peachy. The ideas that we need to discuss is what are the wraparound services we can provide? How can we ensure that the Afghan community that will come is as successful as the Vietnamese community and as the older Afghan community that has come to the United States? That is really largely the job of all of us. And I will say that there are a number of charities that have been very supportive. The Jewish Family Foundation of the East Bay has had a spike of 600 volunteers wanting to work on this issue. The IRC, International Rescue Committee, has been working on this for a number of years as well. So has Catholic Charities. Then you have the smaller nonprofits like the Afghan Coalition that really help with the translation. Many of these people, the translators, speak English, but their wives don't, their children don't. I have talked to Hayward Unified School District, as well as Chabot College out in the East Bay in Hayward. The president of Chabot, as well as Hayward Unified, have stated that they are deeply invested in working on this issue. However, they have challenges with translation. It is not as a big of a focus on language services and so forth as, let's say, Spanish is. And we have huge gaps in service for the new arrivals when they arrive. And those are some of the concerns that we're gonna have to really figure out, that we're gonna have to wrap our heads around. Housing is gonna be a huge piece of it. It is probably one of the most expensive things that we're gonna have to figure out how we can do this. And you know, I'm happy to take some questions if you guys have any. Yes.
Let's take just like one or two because we want to keep moving after that. So why don't we do quickly one, then quickly two, and then we're going to get to Susanna.
Okay, well, all my questions are important, but I thought it was very interesting this morning in the New York Times to see the Taliban posing with women journalists in Afghanistan. And I'm kind of wondering what that even means. I'm hoping it means that they recognize there has to be a change and blah, 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 but I have no idea what it means. Do you?
And I'm not a spokesperson for the Taliban, so I just.
I figured that.
Well, I will say that the Taliban are coming in and saying that they are not the old Taliban. You know, they're Taliban 2.0, that they will respect the rights of women, and they have stated multiple times within the framework of Islam. It will not be what you and I see in the United States as equality. It will be a very different version of what we expect as women's rights. The situation ends up being that safety and security is the #1 focus for all women, all minorities, children, so forth. The Taliban are on their best behavior because the world is watching. Prior to the American invasion of Afghanistan, Afghanistan did not have the internet. So the videos and footage that we see today on social media daily, within seconds of them posting it, we did not see that when the Taliban originally came about. So the world is watching and we do need to hold them accountable.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for my question. Thank you for laying the framework of what we're doing here tonight. My name is Matt Houston. I spent 3 years in Afghanistan as the executive mentor to the Afghan Customs Director General. We have a lot of translators that are still stuck over there right now. And basically, for the past 2 days, I've been on the phone with me and my other mentors, and we're kind of forming a network trying to get as much information to them as we can to get them back over here. I don't know if it's your real house, but is there any program or something that we're doing right now that we can relate to folks over there, not only just the interpreters, but the people in the Afghan government who work with us, who honestly, I mean, I think Canada is doing like way more to get people over to their borders than we are. So is there anything that we could tell them now? Like, hey, if you can make your way through the, up to the airport, you can there's hope.
We as different nonprofits have actually asked, what can we do, right? We've asked our congress members, our senators, and so forth. The honest truth is that they said that wait till next week before we actually have real answers to that. I think that a lot of people right now, they're talking about people are missing in Afghanistan. The honest truth is people are trying to flee Afghanistan. There's already people that have taken literal helicopters in neighboring countries just trying to leave with the clothes on their back. You guys have seen the footage where people are clinging to a military plane to leave the country. This is desperation. Every single person that has served a foreign entity in Afghanistan are seen as traitors. including the president of Afghanistan. Now, he stated that he has left Afghanistan primarily because of the mere fact that he wanted to stop any potential bloodshed in Kabul, which is a very noble and honorable thing to do. By a lot of Afghan standards, I'm going to say that we tend to like a leader that will die for the cause. So he is seen as weak and a traitor at this point in time. With the people wanting to leave, I will say that there's a couple of different resources that I also am trying to put together. We've heard women have been burning their diplomas, burning their, any type of identification, things like that. There's actually an app I will be posting that was created with the help of UC Davis in particular, that says that you can scan your diploma, it will be secure and in the cloud. Those are some of the efforts that we want to promote as well in Afghanistan. Some of the marketing is in languages because we want people to use it. We want women to feel that they can go ahead, burn the physical copy, but you will always have a copy there, even if records are burnt. Individuals that are leaving and fleeing, we ask that they be patient. Again, Taliban are on their best behavior, and that hopefully buys us time to figure out what we can truly do.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Wahab. Appreciate it. I would like to mention also that Councilmember Wahab is also running for State Senate. Let us know how we can. We really did want this to be a community. This is participatory. This is not question and answer. That's why we're kind of keeping that short. But real quick, because it dovetails into Susanna's work, Susanna Cunningham is the Director of Advocacy for Lutheran Social Services, one of the largest organizations working on Afghan refugee resettlement, and has been doing it for months. So before we go into our 3 breakouts, I wanted to give her the opportunity to tell us a little bit about what Lutheran Social Services is doing and all the work that she's been doing for the last, I think, 8 months on this issue in particular. So Susanna.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Manny, and thank you so much, Councilmember Wahab. It's a helpful overview and obviously a very complex situation. As Manny said, I lead congressional affairs and advocacy for Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. It's one of the 9 resettlement agencies. This agency is one of the only resettlement agency that's been part of a very small coalition that's called Evacuate Our Allies Coalition. When Biden affirmed that we would be leaving Afghanistan, so confirming, because the Trump administration, Trump said in October 2020, that we would leave, the Biden administration came in and they confirmed in April of this year that they would in fact be leaving, but moving the timeline to from May to September 11th, sort of this notable timeline. And as soon as that happened, a lot of resettlement agencies, mine included, got really worried because we had been receiving Afghan special immigrant visas, those who worked as interpreters, translators, drivers, cultural attachés, assisting not only our military force, but diplomatic corps. These folks have been arriving to the US for the last 10 years. They were persecuted because of their affiliation with us, which is why we have something called a special immigrant visa. This program is mandated to be, to effectually, from the moment that you apply, it's supposed to be 9 months for you to run through it. I'm sure as a veteran, sir, you know that that does not happen despite it being law. For most people who enter and apply, the average time is more than 3 years. There are some people who have been waiting 6 to 7 to 8 years, who have served diligently and faithfully towards the US mission. Most of the time that delay does not have to do whether or not a concern about security or they didn't apply enough of the information. Sometimes it has to do with something so pedestrian as just the sequencing happening fast enough. And if the sequencing doesn't happen fast enough, one part of the chain expires and then you start all the way in the beginning. Everybody knows about this idea of bone crushing bureaucracy, but what if it was your life at stake? So we knew that the special immigrant visa program was not going to save lives. When the announcement was in April, The withdrawal was going to be in September, and we still had 20,000 Afghan SIVs in the pipeline. So what were we possibly gonna do? So our little coalition of Human Rights First and a subdivision of Vets for American Ideals, which I encourage every veteran to join. American Wartime Allies, which has been working with SIVs for years, Afghan SIVs for years, and Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, and then another organization, the International Refugee Assistance Project, all got together and started reaching out to the administration, an administration full of our own allies. People who want to protect the refugee program, people who want to show up for Afghan allies, and some of our former colleagues. And we frequently would speak to the administration, so this should be no big deal. We heard nothing, nothing. We said, you don't have time to use the SIV program. You cannot trim and improve at the edges. You have to get these folks on planes. And as the council member noted, it's a landlocked country. So we said, we have examples in which we've done wartime ally evacuations. We have in Vietnam in 1975, as we're leaving Saigon, 130,000 Vietnamese were transferred and evacuated to Guam, the US territory of Guam. They had successfully used that period of time to process them, to vet them, and get them to the United States after that processing. We did that again twice in the 1990s for Albanian Kosovars and Iraqi Kurds. The Iraqi Kurds going to Guam, the Albanian Kosovars going to Fort Dix in New Jersey. So we had evacuated folks before. We had done this. My bosses had worked with a person who had led that effort in the 1990s. So we knew we could do it. So all we needed was for the administration, the Biden administration, to respond. And hey, we've got friends, so surely they will. We sent 11 messages. And when you say a message, you mean a letter, like a fully vetted letter of here's what we all think, here, can we please, we're requesting a meeting with you. And then we had 70 organizations co-sign a letter saying this needs to happen, 70 national organizations saying we need to evacuate our allies. We had 50 other series of faith-based organizations saying we need to evacuate our allies. Nothing. The media was covering it. Reporters who had been in Afghanistan for 20 years were furious. So they were covering this with a frenzy. Veterans all over the country, Republican, Democrat, are reaching out to their legislators and saying, you have to act. In June, they passed a law called the Allies Act that was presented by House Representative Jason Crow out of Colorado. That's the first step. Only 2 weeks later, Senator Leahy and Senator Shelby, a Republican and a Democrat, present a emergency supplemental. It's going to provide emergency money in order to not only improve the form and the problems of like even the procedures having to go with the SIV programs, even the eligibility requirement, which used to be you have to serve for 24 months. They said, no, the Taliban is not going to make it and not going to see a difference if you only serve for 23 months. They're not going to let you go, you only serve for that long. So they made it 23 months. They did these really great improvements that were going to make a lot more people who were going to be at risk if the Taliban took over, eligible for safety and refuge. And it passes with unheard of bipartisan support on immigration. Like I work in immigration, I wish we could do these sort of things in other forms of immigration. It then goes to the House and passes that day. Congress gives Biden a mandate to act. And we go back to him and we say, hey friends, you need to evacuate our allies. You needed to start months ago. And every day our partners at American Wartime Allies say, this is how many allies there are still left in Afghanistan. This is how many flights you would have to run every single day to get them out in time for the withdrawal. And we publish it every single day and nothing, no response. So I have to say, it was on Trump. It certainly was on Trump for not negotiating, for deciding that we were going to withdraw with no terms with the Taliban. But it was also on Biden, not simply as he articulated yesterday, to choose between staying in a forever war and saving our allies or leaving. It wasn't this dichotomy of you had to stay forever in order to protect wartime allies. No one was arguing, as he sort of framed yesterday in his speech, that we're trying to insist that we stay. In fact, none of the members of our coalition think we should. But we always said it matters how we leave. So now the US government has 2 weeks. The Taliban and the US have negotiated, the Taliban has said that they will abide the US controlling the airport until August 31st. Now, not only do we have, because of what happened just in the last week, we didn't know, Biden didn't know, they didn't presume that the Afghan forces would fall. Now, but we did say, prepare for the worst case scenario, and it's here. So we have 2 weeks, not to get out just the 20,000 applicants, but as Councilman Wahab said, all of their family members, which we approximate at 88,000 Afghans in a landlocked country. We also have journalists, women's rights advocates, women educators, anyone who worked for USAID related projects. So you're looking at over 100,000 people that you have to get out. And right now planes weren't running yesterday, they were running today. So I say all of this because I want you to understand what the next 2 weeks mean. And so if I'm going to ask you what you could do, I work with, I represent Immigrant Immigration and Refugee Services in my day job. Right here, I'm here as a Truman National Security Project member, I'm the co-chair of the San Francisco chapter. We have many veterans and who are involved literally on an email basis of getting individual folks outside the fence of the airport right now, passed and confirmed to go inside the airport for the very limited flights that are going through. And veterans are playing a valiant role in trying to get their interpreters on those planes. The reason I think that this is really important is because even though I'm with the Resettlement Agency and we will be on the receiving, we will be the people that receive Afghan SIVs when they come or Afghan P2s when they come. And I certainly recommend that you donate to local resettlement agencies. And for us, that LRS, it's LRS.org, but there are a number. There's IRC that represents and serves refugees in the Bay Area. So you can donate. I think that you could sponsor a family. If we successfully get people out, housing in the Bay Area and also housing in Sacramento has become so extreme that we are going to rely on American families opening up their homes and sponsoring Afghan families, which we have actually seen an uptick, not obviously an uptick, but a surge in volunteering to do that, which is honestly one of the most honorable things the US can sort of stand by right now. But I just said you could do those things, but I also want to encourage you, given this 2-week window, to save 100,000 lives, which is call your Congress members, call your senators. We believe that the US government, that the administration will give what is called humanitarian parole. It's not refugee status, it's not the right to work, it's literally just the right to get on a plane and arrive in the US and not be sent back, to not be deported. It has very limited privileges. We want Congress members, senators, and House of Representative leaders to pass legislation as soon as they come back from recess, I believe it's next week, to pass legislation to say for the Afghans arriving who were at risk while they faithfully served our mission, we want them to have all the rights and privileges that we afford refugees who are fleeing violence and persecution anywhere when they arrive in the US. That is something that they will not be granted because we're doing this so quickly. We can't do this thoughtfully. There is no processing. And if we don't do it thoughtfully, that means when Afghans arrive, they don't immediately have the right to work, which means they don't have a right to lift up their family after trauma. So I think what I would ask is you reach out to your representatives, you reach out to your senator, and you say, this must be a priority. And then the week after that, I want you to call them again. And I want you to say, this should never, ever happen again. We need to create a role in the government that always represents the interest and works towards the protection of wartime allies. It's called an ombudsman for allies, is what we're calling it. so that no matter what's playing in the political sort of prerogative and platforms, whether it's in a Republican White House or a Democratic White House, there is always someone in the government who would answer the call when we say, our wartime allies won't be safe. They're going to die. We need to help them. And that someone will pick up the phone when we call. So that's what I would advise you to do. You can donate your money and your treasure. You can donate your time and your talents. You can open up your home, but also please implore your legislators to do more, to hold our president to a higher standard, a president I am so proud of in so many ways. But on this, we must do better.
Thank you both, Councilmember Wahab. Thank you, council member. And you heard from Susanna, who's working on this issue directly. Next, we're going to take 10 minutes. That's it. We're going to quickly break out into 3 breakout groups. So if you're interested in some brainstorming on fundraising, go over here. You'll be with me. If you're interested in doing a breakout on marketing and social media, come over here, and you're going to be with Tomas. Tomas is going to be over here. And you're interested in working on advocacy and reaching out to members of Congress and stuff, find Precious right in the middle. And so it's okay if you're not an expert in this things. We're just going to do a 10-minute brainstorm of what are some ideas we can do. So again, fundraising, advocacy in the back, and marketing, social media over here. We're going to come back in 10 minutes. And for those of you on Zoom, we're going to just break you out into breakout rooms right now. All right, back in 10.
Automatically open all rooms. Okay, I think you guys, it's just one room. So you guys discuss amongst yourselves what are some ideas you have to work on this issue. Okay, we're gonna get back in 10.
Fundraising over here.
Is this the advocacy? Oh no, I'm just I thought I'd make some space.
Yeah, I did not bring cards. I'll email you. I'll just email you. So we definitely have a means to send a direct message already, but for this idea that's this latest one is like a development of this last day, which is we suddenly realized that a whole bunch of people are going to be the process that they're not intended to govern. I just realized I needed my work email, but I got it now. GHIL. It must be a real game trying to do this over the phone. I have mine as Susanna Caitlin, and I just wish it my email was a phone number. There we go. And I'll email you from here. I will eventually. Yeah, I was really yeah, it's great. Yeah. It's fair, yeah. I mean, that's what I do to deal with, conviction. Yeah. That sounds great. And say your first name again. Mine. So lovely to meet you, Myra. Susanna. I'm gonna try to bring up this thing.
Companies, what's something that someone doesn't know? People in the donor advised fund or what are ways of
I'll say like social media is very tough.
should we all like is there an organization that you're raising money?
So we're talking about or maybe
Trying to save life, but it's like that we're like split up. How do we like if we want to engage?
Okay, so at the state level, then what we like this, like federal officials, so much of that's federations of the state level folks, the senators and the assemblymen. Is there anything that we should be asking them for?
I do think that's really about resettlement, like, because it's
Like,
going to be.
Sounds like something
If
to cut through, like, what's
we
up?
can get the leadership to back that up.
People think they're
It's not just
like,
You're asking organizations that
they're also making sure that we have those reference services and the states are right there. On the
what is the organization? If you could choose one organization to raise money for, what would it be?
Just to check it, did everyone on street I didn't buy my packet because it was if you say people did not respond to me, I'll be able to communicate, and I don't forget your and then we're going to be following up with that meeting afterward. Make sure you check in with tomorrow, I was working on that's the resource document that we're prepared, we want that to be a living document. For everyone, so let's have that conversation.
That's right.
We did for.
And so I
shared that anywhere, but let's just like, I'll make sure I cover it tomorrow. Really happy to have you. Thank you.
Tell us what you guys are spending your money on.
Okay, I'm suggesting.
I'll write to everybody at this answer. Raise money. Whether they won or not. Because that's a lot of sense.
Awesome. I think that's what we will. Okay, I love that you're so casual.
Yeah, I love the idea of
But I mean, that's what you have. The other part,
Pretty much all their communities are Afghan, and they speak both national languages, it helps significantly. I will say that the
What are you-
infant that
what are you-
arrived
what's
during
the
that
far
time, went straight to the mission. They are isolated, and they are also being decided to make
I love the fact that we're dragging out strategies. We want to check in with everyone, see what their experience is.
I do want to highlight the
This
areas
is
of stories that I have.
So that is our idea. So we're talking about how we are
Even if they come in
so
Colorado.
far, we definitely been talking about.
Schools and more as a tomorrow.
Right.
If they don't really integrate that,
We are great.
they try to move
This
out.
gentleman has information.
I love the whole.
This gentleman. Yes. And so we've talked about life.
Afghanistan. Personal, I do not also.
I wonder
Getting people like
Yes.
hungry
I'm hearing a lot of ideas, a lot of like, kind of.
So those are some of the ideas that we're.
I think we would also.
I mean, I think all over someone say.
Bay Area is gonna coordinate that now.
Yeah, but anyway.
So, try to get as much money raised.
That's what I found.
Help as many families.
Next year.
Please, yeah. I mean,
So,
it gives them
trying
the
to really
Afghan
figure out a way.
She's Afghan, I know that.
Oh,
And he's
awesome.
Afghan as well.
We all blend in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's gonna be
I
awesome.
really agree with the legislation, because it's criminal bar. I have, why would I do it? What way is relevant?
I had a
Typically,
Google
do
Doc
plan on
line
making
for
more
parts of
of
that.
those.
Okay.
Wow.
I think you're probably.
And, state legislators are what we call teachers. And we work on federal legislation or teaching for, viral
And then the rest is like, you gotta pay
so
out,
they
right?
practice and
So
like
you're looking on that as well, I think that you're partnering with
and if it
state
goes
guys.
well, we spread it around for everyone else, and it's working really well, and if it then goes to the local site, and then free it on up to federal level.
Well,
So
that's
it's
one
state
thing
government, come out
My
and
other
say,
friend,
come on,
fellow
that they are ready, willing, and happy to welcome Afghan refugees. If they say this coming year, we want to accept 150. I just want to figure it's like Biden committing to this. And say that we're making the first commitment as a state to welcome refugees. And that's what I think is happening, it's like, it's on the.
Are there any other centers of community? Obviously, California is welcome.
Yeah.
Is there, for instance, are there some in this area?
So, San Diego, Sacramento, Houston, Dallas, I'm trying to remember West Virginia, we're talking about Virginia, the large. So those are some of the ones that they chose. A lot of people, point of view of, that's the state legislature, from the point of view of your local legislators, I mean, your federal legislators, like Dianne Feinstein, like Nancy Pelosi. One of the things that you can do is,
Right.
you
And I think the whole
don't
year
go,
is that.
say, I want you to lead, I want you to lead on making sure that Afghans that you arrive are protected and supported with all the benefits and rights given to refugees.
Marketing is about
You can
getting
say
more.
that, that's what it is. Legally, it's a little different, but from a political point of view, you want to say this is for refugees who were persecuted for their affiliation.
When we have the money ready, so
If
like
they're
here,
not democracy,
they have
they're
everything they
you
need
need
to.
to
It's
let
not
them
just
to
the-
words, like things like they're.
word.
I don't know, like, Yeah, well, I guess the first thing I would do is oftentimes there's a part of me that's genuine fear. And because it's there as our part, but it's also racist example, like we want to immediately push back. That won't go anywhere, even if you're right. So we start legislating, because we're and you can if you have time, not on social media, but so it's not a persuasion thing, it's a choir builder. So you could do this really long canvassing work, really studying people, and everything where they're coming from, and then just send it to the so that's where you start. When you're doing free social media and you're doing free engagement, you say,
Stick around. Yes. Oh, thanks.
All right, folks, let's get back together real quick and report what we learned. And we're gonna take 10 more minutes and then you'll be back on your way. I promise I'd make this about an hour. So I'm gonna have Tomas and Precious both come up here and share with their learnings. And then we're gonna very quickly, if you haven't already, make your out loud commitment. So I'm gonna start real quick. So I had the fundraising, group. We had a really great conversation. A couple of notes. First, we started and we came up with a bunch of ideas. One was, how can we instigate more peer-to-peer fundraising directly with folks using social media in Afghanistan? There were ideas about going after bigger fish, tech companies and tech CEOs. We have a lot of technology, tech money in the Bay Area. How can we utilize that kind of do-gooder mentality to raise some money for these issues? People talked about donor advised funds. There were some folks that are fundraisers for wealth advisors, a network of venture capital funders, a way to use venture capital, donor advisors, wealth advisors in the Bay to prioritize this issue. Folks were brought up the need to how to speak about this issue, how to come up with a good pitch, and how to talk about it in a sensitive way. And we all kind of agreed that, if we could focus on one thing, it would be to focus locally. The Bay Area has one of the largest Afghan refugee, Afghan American populations in the country. So this is right in our backyard. And we talked about the work that we need to do to help families directly, sponsoring a local family, especially when folks come here, to make sure that they have job training. We talked about even just utensils, cutlery, anything they need to settle into the area. And so we're going to be searching for good organizations that are doing that kind of family sponsorship. We did talk.
Opening doorsinc.org.
Openingdoorsinc.org.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. We may have that on our QR code. The one thing that we said at the end, though, which is important, I'm not saying openingdoorsinc.org doesn't do this, but the importance of supporting organizations that are run by Afghans and center Afghans and actually have Afghans in the work themselves versus white people trying to help Afghans. And there are organizations that do that, including the Afghan Coalition, which works directly with Afghans in community and is in our backyard in the East Bay. And so if there's one organization that you want to leave here tonight and you want to support, the Afghan Coalition is an Afghan-led organization in Afghan community in our area. And so look them up and support them. I'm all about that. It's so awesome to have other Afghans in the room. This never happens for me, and it's really cool. And that's it. And so we are going to be giving you QR codes on the way out to scan. And I think the Afghan Coalition is on there, isn't it, Tomas?
If it's not, I'll add it to it.
Okay, well, we said also be sending you an
It's a live
email.
document.
Great. All right, Tomas, how about you in marketing and social media?
Yeah. So for the social media, we kind of talked a little bit about just ways to kind of be most effective. So a lot of it was finding out which hashtags are being used and kind of grabbing on to a lot of the major hashtags, what kind of movements, what kind of points we are trying to hit with our social media. Definitely if you have WhatsApp groups, reaching out to those, so kind of like building out your network here in the United States, but also if you have people outside of the country, WhatsApp is very big for kind of spreading information. One of our participants has a made a great blog post that she's been getting a lot of traffic on, and I've put that in the Google document. We found that giving people quick actionable items that they can do, giving them like specific end goal tasks and not making it too complicated for them. If we're trying to reach out to Congress people, to the White House contact line, anything like that, like they're giving them it all right there, right away, so they can take and finish the action within those moments. So just a lot of that, making it quick, effective, giving them something that they can, a good landing page. So that's why the blog post is really great, that like it's outside of Instagram, it's outside of Twitter, where you click on it and it lands you somewhere else where there's maybe a little bit more long form, but also kind of gives you like quick actionable items, or it gives you a little bit more education, thing like that. So sharing something like that has been very great. And she's been getting a lot more traction on Instagram than on Twitter. So that was a little bit of a tidbit. Giving them something emotional but easily accessible. So that's kind of been our consensus, is that something emotional but something that's actionable with it as well.
Is that it? Did I cut you off?
No, that was kind of what we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will, so where can people find the blog post? Is it you?
I have it linked. I
Oh,
have it linked in the QR code.
Awesome.
But it is
It's
called
Afghan Culture Unveiled, and it's the first post, has all the details of what you can do.
Afghan Culture Unveiled.
Unveiled.
And it is in the Google Doc, the live Google Doc I have going right now. And then if you have any other comments to make, if you weren't in our group, I'm happy to add any kind of notes. So come see me or email me.
Is there like a sample tweet that we could just copy and paste our legislator?
That's what I was gonna ask. Is this look at the hashtag that people are using?
We haven't done that market research yet. This was a
Save
brainstorming
our
session.
allies.
Yes,
Save
right.
our allies.
Save our allies. Okay,
Can I
amazing.
answer that?
Yeah,
On my post, there's actually, you just type crisis to like 5286 or something, you text it, and then it sends you a form, you fill it out, takes 2 seconds, and it goes to your representative. That's all done automatically within like 2 to 3 minutes.
well, and we'll add that to the Google Doc. I will say, there was an image going around today of a packed military plane with hundreds of folks trying to leave, very powerful. We shared it. I shared it on my personal Facebook, and there are a lot of really important images, and I would just say, like, keep sharing these images to your whatever social media you use. It's important for people to actually see these things. Okay, last group was advocacy. Precious, you want to take my spot?
Oh, sure.
So we had a really large and energetic group, and one thing that we can do right away tomorrow, Speaker Pelosi is hosting a town hall at 5 p.m. And we can all call in and share our concerns and let her know how important this is. If you want to join, I can make sure to give the information to Tomas as well, but you just call in. It's 1-833-261-5164. We're also.
Precious, can you do that one more time? Well, so people can write it in.
Sure, let me take my mask. Pretty clearly.
We'll put that in the QR code.
Yeah. So Nancy Pelosi is holding a town hall tomorrow at 5 p.m. To call in, the number is 1-833-261-5164.
It's 6164.
Just kidding. 6164?
Yeah, 6164.
Okay.
So 261-6164.
6164, and we'll have the correct number in the QR code document. Basically, we reiterated what was shared during the conversation, reaching out to our legislators. But what was really interesting about our conversation is really expanding that, because so many of us here in San Francisco have connections or grew up in other states. Those are still valid connections to those senators and those representatives. So extending our network of outreach to not just Feinstein and Padilla, but also, the state you grew up, the state where your parents still call home. Those senators need to know what's going on as well as the representatives. We also talked about reaching out on the state level, and that was really a rich conversation. Thank you so much for jumping in on that. Here in really specifically around the idea of resettlement. And because, you know, the federal government is going to make policy and they're going to say America will take however many thousand refugees from Afghanistan, but those people will need places to go and wraparound services. And that's where our state legislators can come in. And it's not just reaching out to them, but also urging them to make public declarations of commitment and support. One of the things that came up is the fact, I love this, state legislators are a petri dish for viral xenophobic legislation. And so we need to push them, encourage, educate them to make public statements that they're ready, willing, and able, making a public commitment to resettling these refugees who have done so much for us. Also here in California, there was discussion around what we can do to extend Project Home Key to refugees. And we just had a lot of, I need to circle back with you. We have people who have immediate contacts with the Gates Foundation. How can we do that? If you make donations to campaigns, why not reach out to them and let them know I supported you. I need you to be serious about this issue. And we're just gonna continue to use the document as well and have just a living documented experience. Ooh, don't do that.
Okay, so it's overtime and I want to be cognizant of people's time. So here's what we're gonna do to end. I'm gonna let Tomas get the QR code situation ready. And so is the idea that people scan it on their way out, Tomas? All right, so I'm gonna give him a second to bring that to the door. We're actually gonna exit that way. But before we exit, our commitment thing. So instead of everyone saying to the whole group, for the sake of time, I want you to find someone next to you. And after hearing everything tonight, I'd like you to make one oral commitment, so out loud, and there are a lot of people here who are already doing a lot. This is one new thing that you're gonna do, that you're gonna commit to the person around you that you'll do in the next 24 hours, okay? So take a second, find the person next to you. Tomas, now is a good time to get the QR code over there, and everyone's gonna exit on the right-hand side.
Okay, bye, Sean.
Even